And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo, and we got another great show in store for you. Thank you, Anthony Papa, Tony Papa, for joining us on Let Them Talk. I've been trying to get you for a long time. You're a very busy person.
Yeah.
But you finally came out with your book, and really happy to get it. And we're going to talk about your book, which is called This Side of Freedom. All right? And it's Life After Clemency. Very interesting book because Tony Papa, who's an official, really, is head of the
Manager of Media Relations.
Manager of Media Relations at the Drug Policy Alliance, which is a famous drug advocacy group, drug legalization, drug decrim advocacy group here in New York and around the country and around the world. And you spent, and we've had Randy Credico on, you spent 12 years of a 15 to life sentence in New York under the Rockefeller Drug Laws and lived to tell the tale.
Right.
And we were just discussing how difficult that was.
Yeah,
and
it was pretty hard. This book is a new memoir. My first book, 15 to Life, How I Painted My Way to Freedom, talks about the prison experience. This book talks about my 18 years of freedom. And it's about reentry. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I'm distributing and donating it to prisons in the United States because I wanted to write a book about doing time and then coming out and what people are going to face. You know, it's not easy. For me, freedom slapped me in my face really hard. I was granted executive clemency in 1997 by Governor George Pataki. So when I came out, it was sudden. I wasn't really prepared, and freedom was not what I thought it was going to be. Many roadblocks existed for me. Housing, getting a job, relationships. Everything was a struggle. So this book documents the struggles I went through, and I'm hoping that prisoners in prison could read this book before they come out so they know what they're facing. It's not going to be easy for them.
So, Tony Papa, let me ask you to tell us a little bit about how this happened. Now, I guess you were released in 1997. You were incarcerated in 1985, 12 years before. You were sentenced to 15 to life. How did that come to happen?
Well, I made the biggest mistake in my life. I got involved with drug activity. I was bowling on a team in Yonkers, New York, and I was coming late to the league. And then my bowling teammate asked me why I'm coming late. I said, well, my car keeps breaking down. Why don't you fix it? I didn't have any money. He says, well, you want to make some money. So he introduced me to this guy who was dealing drugs in the bowling alleys of Westchester County. At first, I said no because I knew it was about, I was married at the time. I had a 7-year-old daughter. I didn't want to get involved with it. But when you get desperate, you do stupid things. And that's what happened. I got desperate. It was Christmas time. A guy called again. He says, you want to make that fast buck like a carrot dangling on the string? You know, you can make a fast $500. You run this envelope up from the Bronx to Mount Vernon, New York. And I did it. And what I did is I walked into a police sting operation. 20 cops came out of nowhere. I did everything I could do wrong, and I was sentenced to 2 15 to life sentences, not 1, 2.
How much in the way of drugs did you possess?
It was 4.5 ounces of cocaine.
4.5 ounces of cocaine.
And I was getting $500 to bring the envelope. So that means I ruined my entire life for $500. So when I did everything wrong, I was sent to Sing Sing Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison in Austin, New York.
Up the river, literally.
Literally up the river. And it was there I learned how to do time. Because you learn how to do time. And for people who don't learn how to do time, you're in for a world of trouble. So 2 older prisoners took me under their wing and taught me how to do that time.
What's the secret to doing time?
Stay away from trouble. There's designated areas in the prison that you stay away. In Sing Sing, it was called Times Square. Mm-hmm. It was like a place where they had 24-hour gambling. They had shops set up with the cells, McDonald's, Indian food. It was people sold leather goods, pocketbooks, wallets. You could buy a hit on somebody. You want sex. There was a transvestite prostitution ring. There was actually a CO prostitution ring where 88 that got busted. It was all the headlines, female correctional officers selling their bodies and selling drugs. So Sing Sing was a wild, wild place. If you look for trouble, it wasn't far away. And one thing about Sing Sing, if you didn't have a drug habit going in, you'd leave with a drug habit. There was so many drugs in Sing Sing, it was unbelievable. If you had the money, you get any type of drug you want. And this point was told in a film I was in a couple of years ago called Breaking the Taboo. It's opened in Brazil. I flew down in Brazil and did the opening, and I had the last line in the film where the producer said it was the best line he heard out of like 200 interviews in 18 cities across the United States. And the line was, if you can't control drugs in a maximum security prison, how can you control drugs in a free society?
Right. Well, that's what comes to mind, is that the first thing that came to mind is when you told me you got 2 15 to life sentences for $500 and 4.5 ounces of cocaine, which isn't even a Schedule 1, it's a Schedule 2 drug, right? It made me think, well, did the prosecutors or the judge or anybody show you any mercy based on that?
Well, but bottom line, this is what happened. The break I got was I got the 2 sentences rolled into one. Since it was a first-time nonviolent drug offense, the judge only gave me 1 15 to life sentence. But because of my stupidity, I didn't know the system, I didn't want to go to jail. I was afraid, and I didn't want to leave my wife and my daughter, and I was scared. It's normal, and many people do this. I was out on bail for a year. I had a lawyer that really was not concerned with me. He just wanted to make the $15,000 trial fee, and I didn't have the money to pay him. I had to use my bail receipt, and basically what happened was when he told me, when I was ready to take a 3 to life offer from my first lawyer, I met this second lawyer through my sister, where I ran a radio repair installation place, and I put an alarm in this woman's car. And when she got the car, she said, "Look, it's a great job. I'm going to come next week to bring my other car." I said, "Well, I'm not going to be around. I'm going to be in prison." She said, "Well, why don't you have a lawyer?" I said, "Sure I do." And she said, "Well, isn't he any good?" I said, "Well, he wants me to take 3 lives." She said, "Well, you should try my lawyer." I said, "Is he any good?" She said, "Well, he's like Perry Mason." As soon as I hear those words, Perry Mason, for the audience who don't know who he was, famous TV lawyer.
Right, and there aren't many TV defense lawyers. There aren't. There's not too many models.
Well, this guy was not any Perry Mason.
Right.
He told me when he met me near the courthouse in Westchester County, tell the judge you want a week. He drove up in a Jaguar, had a $1,000 suit, Rolex watch. He had the cell phone when cell phone wasn't around. He had the phone in the car. And, he said, come, just tell the judge, come to my office Monday. So I went, told the judge I need a week to put my affairs in order. He gave it to me. I went to see him. I go to his Wall Street office, all these photographs of all these gangsters. I mean, all the famous gangsters. And he's saying, "Oh, these are all my clients." He says, "Look, if you take this offer that they're giving you of 3 years to life, 5 or 6 years down the road, you're going to be banging your head against the cell door." And I found myself actually rubbing my head, like when I was banging my head against the cell door. And I says, "Okay, what do I do?" He said, "Well, what's your lawyer's telephone number?" I gave him the telephone number, called the lawyer, find the lawyer on the spot. He became my lawyer. But it was like, "How are you going to pay me?" I said, "Well, what's the fee?" He said, "Well, what were you going to pay the other lawyer?" So I just made up a number. I said $15,000. He said, "That's what I want." He says, are you going to pay? I said, I got a bail receipt, $15,000. That's it. That's how you're going to pay me.
No.
Went to trial, did everything I could do wrong, and wound up getting 2 15-year-to-life terms. When I lost the trial, he turned, he had tears in his eyes, and he said, sorry, pal. And that was it. Never heard from him again. It was like, that was it. I ran out of money. My Uncle Frank, God bless his soul, paid some of the money for the appeal, but I wound up losing the appeal. Lost the trial, lost the appeal with the same lawyer, and I wound up having to do the 15th to life sentence. While in prison, I didn't know how I was going to survive, and one day, after a few months, I smelled paint in the tiers where I was walking in the prison. Sing Sing had, I was in a maximum security block, A block, and I was walking the tiers. It was on the 3rd tier, and I smelled paint. So I followed the odor, and it wound up taking me to the cell where this prisoner was a painter, Indio. And in his cell, he had all these magnificent portraits. It was unreal. He was a portrait painter, and he turned around and he came out. He wanted to fight with me because one of the rules in prison is you don't look in somebody's cell. It's a sign of disrespect. Oh. Disrespect is high on the level of living in a prison. And
it's not as strong when you get out, and that's sometimes one of the transitions you have to make. We're such a dishonorable bunch out here in the free world, right?
I guess you're right. So anyway, he wound up, wanted to fight me. I said, no, I don't. I admire your painting. I had a big head. He gave me some. He said, you have a paint? I said, no. He gave me some watercolor paper, some brushes, went in my cell overnight, painted the worst paint you ever saw, but it created this fire, this desire to be a painter. So I studied, ate, drank, slept the art, studied the masters, and then a couple of years later, 1988, sitting in my cell one night, picked up a mirror, looked in the mirror, saw an individual who was going to spend the most productive years of life in a cage, picked up a canvas, and I painted the self-portrait titled 15 to Life. 7.5 years later, I wound up at the Whitney Museum of American Art. While I was in prison, I got a lot of publicity on my case, and then 2 years later, George Pataki, the governor of New York, granted me executive clemency.
Right. So that's interesting. Why did he decide? Because of your notoriety?
Based on the art. What you have to do is you have to separate yourself. Hundreds of people applied for clemency. And basically what I did is I started getting press. I wrote my own press release, actually, after the Whitney Museum, and went to the law library, got magazine articles, addresses of reporters, and I wrote a press release, and I started sending it out. I interviewed myself, and a few months later, Westchester County paper came, interviewed me, and Mr. Popper's paintings, that was the first piece, and then it all followed like a domino effect. New York Times, New York Law Journal, Italian magazines, all kinds of stuff, where they actually had to make a day, just visiting day for me, because they were overburdened with taking care of the journalistic needs of the prison for my interviews for myself. But I used it as a vehicle to talk about the atrocities of prison, where the warden at the prison, who actually gave me his recommendation for clemency, wanted to take it back. My counselor caught up with me and said, look, I know you're trying to do the right thing, but you got to watch what you're doing, because they're getting angry. You're using the press as a tool to talk about the system in a bad way. You're going to get in trouble. Soon after that, I got punished and actually moved from my maximum security cell in Sing Sing.
Where you felt safe?
Where I felt safe, because they used to lock the door. I used to tell them to lock me in. This way you could shut your eyes and not worry about nothing. To the medium part of the facility, Tapan, where there was a dorm. It was a dorm area where if you sat in your seat like this, the dorm area, you could see everybody in the prison, in the area. It was like 75 people, and it was all open, very dangerous. Anybody could walk in and stab you if they wanted to.
Oh my God.
Dangerous. So it was not a pretty experience. I stood there for about a year and a half until I was granted executive clemency, and then
with one eye open.
One eye open, and then literally painted my way out of prison and came out. When I first came out, I was I didn't know what to do. I wanted to start speaking at colleges through my professor, Dr. J, and Sam Schwartz, Bronx Community College. They invited me to do a couple of shows, a couple of speaking to students. And then, so I developed this whole intellectual rap about being in prison. So what happened, what changed my life, and what put me on the road to who I am today as an activist, was I was invited to go speak at Spofford Correctional Facility for youth in South Bronx.
Absolutely, Hunts Point. I used to teach at PS 48 right down the street.
So you know,
I know it well.
I lived right there on 152nd, and I walked over with this writer that invited me. And I couldn't believe what I saw. It was like a mini Sing Sing. They had like the mini wall with the fence, with the dangling wire. And
they put children in there, basically.
When I walked in the auditorium, I had this whole rap, but that I was giving to college students. And then when I walked in, I saw my audience was 10 to 15-year-old boys and girls. It totally blew my mind. Yeah. And when this like the 8-year-old kid asked me, have I ever been raped in prison? I found out he was waiting to go to upstate. He was in for murder. And I was totally floored by it. But that experience told me that I needed to, for most prisoners, when they do an extensive amount of time, they want to forget about the experience. But for me, I use my prison experience as a badge of honor to do what I do today as an activist, fighting for the rights of prisoners and fighting the war on drugs. And basically, so when I came out, I started a group, Mothers in the New York Disappeared, with Randy Credico, with the William Custom Fund. And we started out trying to change the Rockefeller Drug Laws, the laws that put me away, and I left many others in prison.
15 to life for any drug possession at all, pretty much, right?
Sales and possession at the time.
Right, and it could be even marijuana or something like that.
Well, not marijuana, but if you sold enough, you could get a lot of time. But it was like for any controlled substance, 2 ounces of sale or 4 ounces of possession at the time. And then the law.
What is it now? Has it changed?
Yes, it has. We fought for many years. At first, we started. We came up with this idea of having this protest at Rockefeller Center, near Rockefeller Center near St. Patrick's Cathedral, on 50th Street.
Right. So Anthony Papa, I wanted to, because this is so great and we could go on, I want to make sure people know about your book.
Okay.
Because we've gotten the background, and this is the book that you've written. Tell us about it, This Side of Freedom, because we have to pick up your life story another time and how you defeated the Rockefeller Drug Laws. That's worth another half hour.
For sure.
Let's take a few minutes and talk about your book, because you said this is to help people in the same kind of situation you were in.
Right.
What kind of problems do people face when they walk out of prison?
Well, there's an array of problems, as I point out in my book, my 18 Years of Freedom. You have problems with employment, getting a job. Like, let's say in the chapter I talk about my first job and how I was so excited in an interview process. And then all of a sudden, when I came to the application, I had to check the box. I was, have you ever committed a felony? I froze. I didn't know what to do. And people now
and clemency is not the same thing as being
pardon. No,
you haven't had your record totally erased.
No, it just speeds up the point of parole where I automatically was eligible. So I shaved like 3 years off my sentence, and that's a lot, believe me. Now Obama, what he's doing, giving out clemencies.
49 people just today, I heard.
214 a couple of days ago. Where 562 people were granted. He has the record now of granting the most commutations of all the presidents.
Although there's 6,000 more to go.
Well, those are the applications that are waiting. And he says that, he has 5 months left, and he's going to do a lot more. Well, what I'm hoping that this does is get Congress off their backsides and create bipartisan legislation that's going to help many, many individuals return to society to be with their loved ones.
Right, but we don't want a Jack Henry Abbott. So we were talking about it earlier, where somebody is released from prison, dumped in the streets, and thinks that somebody asking them directions on the street or who stepped on their toe in a subway wants to kill them, and they respond in the wrong way. Is that a common problem?
Well, not at all. Not with clemencies, because believe me, they thoroughly go through your record. It's checked and rechecked. They send people to your home. Okay. If you have a bad record, you're not getting a clemency or commutation. You're not coming out, because there's no satisfaction for a president or governor. Like Andrew Cuomo in New York State, I've been pushing him to get clemencies from the beginning of his office, and then finally last year he did. He cracked it. He gave 2 clemencies out, but you know,
he cracked 2. He gave out 2.
He gave 2. Well, you know, I mean, he gives out a couple of pardons. The guy has presidential aspirations, so he's being careful.
Right.
It's a no-win for those politicians, because it's, you know, you don't get any points for it, really. It's just personal satisfaction that you're helping somebody out.
Right.
You know, I've done shows, the New School, I was on a panel with former governors that were trying to get sitting governors to use their pardon powers more. This all goes back to the Willie Horton syndrome.
Right, the revolving door commercial that George Bush used,
Right.
Roger Ailes, who was a devastating attack and very racial and racist, and
Right.
it led to the person who's going to probably become president, Hillary Clinton, you know, talking about professional, I forget her exact word was, but predators who are out there saying that our youth are basically predators out to get us.
It's a tough, you know, I mean, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. Gary Johnson probably I'm going to vote for, or the Green Party.
The Libertarian,
Jill.
right.
But
the Clintons put so many people in prison under these laws, right?
It's true.
They supported the Rockefeller Drug Laws style laws all over the country.
And then Clinton himself pushed through, you know, this bill that really killed habeas corpus. Because I remember I worked in a law library. I was a jailhouse attorney for 8 years.
Sure.
I handled a lot of post-conviction remedies.
Present the body, habeas corpus, something that would allow you to force a judge to look at a case.
Well, in the state level, that would be you exhaust your state remedies, then you talk about your federal constitutional violations, and then you got a shot to get out under a federal habeas corpus. But because of Clinton, it limited, because he gave up prisoners' rights because of his personal ambitions as a politician. So that was then. At this point, and like we're talking about the book, there's many different experiences that I went through, and this side of freedom, Life After Clemency. It's available on Amazon. And as an ebook, soft cover.
Goodreads, I saw it all over the place.
It's a good read. It's real, you know, real interesting. The kind of things I've been through for the last 18 years. So I'm hoping that it's going to help people, especially the project that I have, where I'm donating the book to state prisons, libraries. And prisoners could read about, you know, what goes on and the roadblocks that exist for prisoners when they come out, when they interact with society.
What would you tell? What's the chief advice you would give to someone who just, you know, I could think of a friend of mine who just did 6 years or just did 3 or 4 years, and they're coming out into the street, you know, from federal prison or state prison somewhere. What's the first thing they should get in their minds?
Don't try to make up the time you did. You lost. You're not going to make it up. Don't be angry. It's over. Go on with your life. You're free now, and you have your whole life ahead of you. That's the problem.
Don't go looking for the person who put you in. Don't look to go dig up the old bodies.
And if you're an addict, you know, you go to the same neighborhood, the bell rings, you're going to start doing drugs. You're going to wind up back in the same place.
Should they legalize drugs, in your opinion?
I think they should decriminalize many drugs. Legalized, they already have 4 states, 5 states.
And the world didn't end marijuana, and they're going to, I think, half a dozen more are planning to legalize this November.
25 states of medical marijuana.
Right.
It's here to stay. Now, the hard drugs, I can't call it, but, you know, I would say let's take our time and look at it. For personal point of view, you know, I've done.
How about tobacco and alcohol?
It's
which kill
pretty hard drugs.
120 times more people than hard drugs.
No, it's true. It's true. The war on drugs is a total disaster. It's a failure. 2.3 million people locked up. because of it, 100,000 in the federal system. In New York State, there's I think right now 50,000. Prisons exploded by the seams at the time where the war on drugs went into effect, and the crack cocaine disparity laws, mandatory minimum sentencing.
Right.
The Rockefeller Drug Laws were the precursor for those mandatory.
Right. Which are now they're sort of in some, like California and some states, are starting to step back from all of this.
They're trying why? Because of economics.
Mm-hmm.
It's economically feasible to do so. Mm-hmm. It's not about justice. It's about judicial economy. So now states want to reduce the budgets of prisons because it's a cheaper way to go, and they save themselves money.
Mm-hmm. It happened because of 2008 when there was a big reduction in the budgets because of the collapse of the economy. The bubble burst, and everybody, all the local governments had no money. So all of a sudden they discovered drug legalization and decriminalization, right?
Yeah.
So this has all been about money from day one.
From day one, it's true. So, and in the book, like I said, I talk about people, the experiences that I went through, the people I've met. I've met millionaires, billionaires.
In jail?
No, movie stars when I came out.
When you came out, right?
Not too many in jail. And how I helped them. They helped me do things that I couldn't do without them. Mm-hmm. You need money to do what we do at Drug Policy Alliance. We're the biggest advocacy organization in the United States, maybe the world.
DPA.org, right? Would that be it? DPA.org? Is that
Drugpolicy.org.
Drugpolicy.org. Check it out. Drugpolicy.org.
And then if you want to see my art or read about my experiences, you go to my personal website. It's 15tolife.com. TOlife.com, and you can find my books on there. In this book,
great,
This Side of Freedom, and the links. Click right to Amazon if you want to pick it up.
Absolutely, Anthony. So we have less than a minute. So again, getting back to the question of jail, so don't try and go back into what you were doing. Get away from the old neighborhood.
Get a job, put money in your pocket, because with money in your pocket, you feel like $100. $1,000.
Right, better than you did before. Yeah. And do you think that
self-sufficiency is the key?
There's rules and laws. We don't have a lot of time, but they want to change it so that it's easier for people to get jobs, and so you can't ask people that question anymore. New York City just passed that regulation.
Yeah, and Obama is trying to do something at the federal level. You can't ask it in the beginning of an interview.
Whether you've been in and out of jail or not. Right. Thank you very much, Anthony Papa, for joining us. We'll have you on again to talk more about this. Thank you.